Hopefully you've all managed to join okay. I think we'll just give it 30 more seconds just for a few more people to join before we get started. Okay, so thank you all for joining. We're here on our webinar. We're here to talk about harnessing Microsoft Power Automate for organisational success. So if you're interested in how Power Automate works or anything like that, you're in the right place. This is the place for you. I am Charlie Lee. I'm Director of Technology for Sierra Costa. We're going to do some introductions to the speakers in a minute. I just want to go over what we're going to cover today a little bit. So this is a bit of a session for those to cover all audiences. So it's going to cover the very basics of what Power Automate actually is and what it's all about. What benefits there are to you as an organisation for taking advantage of using Power Automate. And then we're going to talk a bit about the basics. So we're going to talk about literally like how you get started, what are some of the prerequisites in order to use it. We'll show you the basics of how you set up a flow. We'll also go into some more advanced topics. We'll talk about how you can integrate your process automations in Flow with other Microsoft technologies. We'll talk a bit about the advanced flow concept. So if you want to take something quite simplistic, but you want to maybe go a bit further, you want to bring it into a sort of production scenario where it's like a fairly integrated business process, there are some advanced flow concepts that we can look at. And then we're going to talk a bit about a case study. So we're going to wrap this up at the end by looking at some work we've done with one of our existing customers, where we've really sort of show you how Power Automate can work in a real world scenario, sitting behind a sort of a bigger solution. And then a little bit at the end, I'm going to talk about Sierra Costa, talk about who we are, how we can help. And then we've got an opportunity at the end for a bit of closing and Q&A. So in terms of our speakers today, obviously there's me. As I said, I'm Charlie Lee. I'm Director of Technology for Sierra Costa. I've been working in Microsoft technologies and products for over 20 years now. I started out mainly in the SharePoint space, but obviously since then I've expanded my skill set over a whole range of areas, and mainly management and boring things like that now. Our main speakers today are going to be Ben and Ahmad. So Ben is one of our managing solution developers. He's both of them specialize in full stack development, but they also work very closely with the Microsoft ecosystem, Power Platform, and a lot of the work that we do in those spaces. Ahmad is a Microsoft certified Power Platform solution architect. And so you've got the right people here to give you a good overview of Power Automate and how it can be useful to your organization. In terms of your participation as the audience today, there's a few things that I would ask. So we have a Q&A feature enabled on the webinar. Please use that. So if anything comes up that you're not sure about, you want to ask any questions, please do that. We have got some time at the end of the session where we're going to look at any questions that have been raised and try to answer them in the flow of the session. But we'll also follow up with those people if necessary, or if we run out of time, we can follow up with anyone. So please put your questions in there. If you feel like you want to share anything about the event, either right now while it's happening or after the event, then please do that on social media. We've put a hashtag there, CC Power Automate Webinar. Please feel free to use that so we can track participation after the event and have a look at what people have been saying. And then in terms of this presentation itself and the recording of the webinar, we will be sending out links afterwards to be able to download the video and also the presentation itself. So if you've missed it or you want to look back at it, you'll have access to do that after the event. So I'm now going to hand over to Ben to go into the detail.
Thanks a lot, Charlie. Yeah, so let's start with, well, an overview. What is Power Automate? So to summarize in one or two sentences, it's a tool that allows you to automate workflows without code, saving time and increasing productivity. A workflow, or a flow as it's often referred to in Power Automate, can range from being very simple, where the flow performs a single task, to much more complex flows with many actions connecting to many different services. So just to get us started, I've listed a few common use cases where you could use Power Automate to improve things in your business. So the first one we've got is sending an email notification when a SharePoint list is updated. Very easy to do in Power Automate. Another example would be publishing to social media platforms at scheduled times. So you could, have a list of all of your various things that you want to post them all to Twitter or X or Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. Power Automate could help you with that. You could, something we see often is, the need for reports. So you could use Power Automate to collate that data, generate a report, and then you could have it automatically upload that report to the relevant team. You could also use Power Automate for synchronizing data between different applications. That's often a challenge that organizations see. So Power Automate can assist you with that. Finally, automating business processes such as reviews or approvals. Again, this is something we see come up a lot. We have a demo later on that actually shows a fairly advanced kind of approval process. So you'll get a chance to see that in a later slide. So continuing on with what is Power Automate at a really top level. So it's a no-code solution. So there's a really easy to use user interface. Again, you'll get a chance to see that later on in this webinar. But it's been designed so that non-developers can use this tool. You do not have to have kind of any prior development experience, any coding experience. So that's a really good feature. Secondly, it integrates with a huge array of services. So not just Microsoft products or services, although it does integrate with those, SharePoint, Outlook, Teams, whatever you want to use. But there's also a huge number of third-party services that you can integrate with. A few examples I've got here: Google Drive, Dropbox, Twitter, Salesforce, all those sorts of things are available. Massive range. The third thing to say, flows can run unattended. So you set your flow up and it kind of just works in the background. It runs in the cloud. There's no additional kind of IT infrastructure for your organization to worry about. Microsoft deals with all of that. So that's a great feature. And then the final thing to add is it is included with a number of kind of Microsoft licenses. So it is possible that you may already have access depending on the kind of licenses that your organization uses. And again, we touch on that briefly in another slide as well. So the benefits of Power Automate. So there's three main benefits of Power Automate. It saves you time, increases efficiency in your organization, and it improves the accuracy of your work through errors that creep in, when you're doing tasks manually, especially those kind of more repetitive tasks. Often you see errors creep in there, so Power Automate can help with that. Got a few headline statistics here from Microsoft. First one, 93% of Fortune 500 companies are using Power Automate. We've got organizations report 140% return on when using the Power platform. And the final one we've got is organizations have reported a 45% decrease in app development costs with Microsoft Power Platform. So now we're going to look at getting started with Power Automate. So the first thing that you're obviously going to need, I mentioned earlier, is a license. So Power Automate is packaged with a number of Microsoft subscriptions. I've included a little snippet here of some of the licenses where you can have the basic Power Automate license included as standard. So it's worth having a look at that. There's quite a few variations, and it's important to understand that there are some limits to the package licenses. So you will have basic capabilities. So with these licenses, you generally have access to all of the standard features of Power Automate. It will allow you to create and run flows, connect to a wide variety of services and automate tasks. So it does do most of the work that you want. However, when you start creating more advanced flows, you may find that you run into the need for premium connectors. That may require additional license. And also there's a couple of features that are regarded as premium as well. And again, you may need a higher license for that, either a per user or per flow plan license. One more thing to consider, usage limits. They're fairly generous, but it's important to understand that there are usage limits, such as the number of flows that run per month. And again, that's somewhere where you may need to improve the license that you are using. So let's start looking at some of the core concepts of Power Automate. And the first thing I guess we want to look at is the different types of flow. So we've got 3 types of flow. The first type is automated flows. These are flows triggered automatically based on predefined events or conditions, such as when a new email arrives, a file is added to a folder, or a record is created in a database. Then you've got, secondly, your instant flows. These are flows manually triggered by a user whenever needed, such as a button click or through a mobile app. And then your final type of flow, you've got scheduled flows. These flows are triggered at specific times or intervals, allowing you to automate recurring tasks or processes. That's your 3 flow types. Then the next thing to look at is triggers. So these are events that start the execution of a flow. They define the conditions under which a flow should be initiated. Triggers can be based on various types of events. You can see in the slide, I've provided a few examples from Teams, D365, Monday.com, Google Calendar, Salesforce. There are literally hundreds of available triggers. So worth exploring that. You know, most of the larger pieces of software do have an integration. So we've had triggers. The next thing to think about is connectors. So connectors are pre-built integrations that allow Power Automate to connect and to interact with external applications, services, and data sources. Connectors provide a way to easily extend the functionality of Power Automate by enabling communication with a range of third-party systems. Examples of connectors include M365, D365, Azure, all your social media platforms, you know, other productivity tools such as Google Drive, Dropbox, Trello, etc. Huge range. So the next thing to consider, a core concept of Power Automate, is actions. So actions are kind of the core of Power Automate. They're the individual tasks or operations performed within a flow. They define the specific actions to be taken in response to a trigger or as part of a sequence of steps in the flow. A few example actions could include sending an email, creating or updating a record in a database or a CRM system. It could be generating a report, posting a message, executing a custom piece of code if required. You can also do that in Power Automate, or even calling a third-party API. So those are your actions. And then we've also got control actions that work next to actions. So control actions are used to manage the flow of our operations within the automated processes. So control actions enable you to implement logic, loops, and conditions within your workflows. So that's how they work. So now I'm going to hand you over to Ahmad, and he's going to talk to you about expressions in Power Automate.
Thank you, Ben. So we can take a look at expressions which are very handy in Power Automate, and we can use them to perform calculations. We can use them to manipulate data, maybe control the logic flow of the logic within the flow. And how I like to see them is that they are basically multiple functions nested within themselves. We can take a closer look at the example as well. But yeah, generally, they can be used to dynamically generate values, to apply conditions, or to format data. For example, format, dates. So if you take a closer look at the example, here you can see a bunch of nested functions. So the whole idea behind this is you want to convert a file name with the extension to a file name without the extension. So remove the .pdf from the name. So what you would do is you would reference the file name with the extension, and using its last index, using the last index of the dot, you could remove it from the variable name itself. On the right, we have a bunch of examples for the expressions. These are all very useful if you really want to just manipulate your data and to format your data. So moving forward, we can discuss the approach to get started with Power Automate development. So what we can do is you can brainstorm with your team to identify the areas where the automation can improve efficiency, productivity within your organization. You could look for any repetitive tasks, any manual processes that you have that can be automated. And then once you have your use cases identified, you can move on and select your connectors from the list available. It would allow you to connect with various apps, services, any external APIs that you have. And you can even utilize the pre-built templates and connectors that Microsoft gives you to jumpstart your automation efforts. And then once you get started, you could create your flows based on your requirements. And you could experiment with different triggers, different actions and conditions available just based on your specific needs. And then the good idea would be test them thoroughly in a controlled environment and just to make sure that they work as expected. Next, we can just dive a little bit into Power Automate. I would like to give you a live example of how it all works together, everything that we've discussed now. I would be sharing my screen, taking control. So once you land onto Power Automate, you would be welcome with this kind of interface where you have your list of flows. You would have your list of solutions on the left, the templates, and then what you can do is you could create a new flow, and you could choose the type. It could be a automated flow. You could give your flow a name, a relevant name, and then choose one of the triggers. Like Ben has talked to you about these. These are hundreds of triggers that you can use, whichever are relevant. And then you could even choose to create an instant flow, or you could choose to create a scheduled flow in the same manner. So now I think it would be a good idea to give you a little example of something that we have built internally. So we have a SharePoint list, which we use to hold all the solution design documents internally. So this is our Technical Design Authority document library. And if you take a look at the library settings, these are all the relevant properties that we have created for each document. So the most relevant would be the title. We define the solution, the design type, the technical lead, who's going to be the reviewer, what would be the TDS status. So when a person starts working on their document, it would be in the draft state. And then later it could be, they could assign a reviewer. So it would be reviewer assigned. It would be if someone leaves a few comments after review, it will go back to the original creator to make some amendments. And then we also define the date of next review, who's going to be the next person working on this document. So we had a bunch of issues where we had to chase people to update them. So we thought it would be a good idea to create a notifications so depending on the status, we created a automated flow that would be sending email notifications based on if the status is updated or the document properties are updated. And we created a scheduled flow to chase people if the review is going to be in 1 day, or if the review is today, or if the review date has passed. And we also created a instant flow. So it's a handy little trick where you can add in a actions column within the document library list and add in a button. So it would, when we click on this button, it would post a allocation message in Teams. We can take a deeper look into it later. So these are the 3 flows, or depending on all the flow types that we have talked about earlier. So the first one, we can take a look at the status update notification. So when you start creating your flows, you would be firstly adding in your trigger. In this instance, we've defined that this would trigger the start of our flow. So when a file has been created or its properties are modified, the flow would run. So we have created this as part of a solution, and the site address and site library are environment variables that we're using. And then below the trigger, these are our actions where we are initializing a few variables, saving the URL, the library name, the previous version and current version of the document, which you'll be using later on. And here we can see these are the scopes. So scopes are, you can think of them as containers. So these really help us organize and manage the actions, just to make them more easier to manage and more readable. So this would be the main logic of my flow. This would be a container for that. And then here, here we have created some parallel tasks. So these would run in case the flow would fail. It's a little unfinished at the moment, but here we would be probably maybe sending in a email notification to the support just to let them know if the flow has any issues. And once we complete the flow, if it's successful, we will terminate it. So we can dive a little bit deeper into this. So you can see we've created a condition statement where based on the TDS status, if it's not equal to null, if it's not equal to draft, if the next action person is not undefined, we would be sending a HTTP request. What it does here, it's really powerful. So you can do similar things when we want to request maybe an external API that you have created. So here we're getting the version history, the last 2 version histories of the document. We're doing a bit of the data manipulation here to parse the JSON, and then the variable that we created earlier, we're setting the previous version and the current version just to compare them later on. And then we're checking for the changes based on the two versions that we have. And then if all the relevant columns, if they have been changed, then we would get further properties from the TDA list, and then we would create a card, a adaptive card in a chat with the workflow. So it would create something like this within the workflow chat. So it would be personal. You would get the document information that it has been updated. I think it's the wrong one, but yeah. So you would get a notification which would say, your document, it has been updated by the modifier. So similarly, this was our automated flow. It runs automatically based on the updated file properties. Next, we can take a look at our schedule flow. So this reoccurs every day. It runs every day based on the defined interval. So here we do the similar things. We define our variables at the very top. Then we've defined our main scope, which holds the main flow of the logic, and then a bit of error handling in case the flow fails and when it succeeds. So when we dive deeper into the main flow logic, here it's very simple. We're getting the document properties, and then we're just finding out if the date of next review, the date the document would have been reviewed, is it 1 day away? If it is, it's gonna be reminding the user that the document needs to be reviewed in 1 day. If the review is today, it would have a similar message, and if the review date has passed, it will let them know that your review date has passed. So we do the same. We send a message via the Teams to let them know about the current state of their documents, and this is the correct one. So it would show a adaptive card, something like this, with your solution design document. It's due to be reviewed in 1 day. It would show you the status. It would show you who's the next action person and when the next review will happen. And it's a relatively easy example of a schedule flow. Next, we can take a look at our instant flow. So instant flow, it's run on command. So you can add in a button in a Power App, or you could have a button added to the library itself, like I've done. You can post an allocation message in Teams by a press of a button. You could give it a reference of the file that you've selected. And similarly, within our main flow logic, we're getting the file properties, and then we're getting the max mention token for the reviewer. And then we're posting a message in Teams, that you've been allocated this review of this item, and we're tagging in our resource team for time allocation. So it's give you these three examples of the flow. Can you give you a good hands-on on how you can automate any manual processes that you have within your organization. So thank you for that, and I will stop sharing my screen so you can see the slides again. Good. So now I think we can talk about integrating Power Automate and few of the advanced concepts. So next we can talk about how Power Automate can be integrated and can be seamlessly integrated with various technologies within the Microsoft ecosystem. So first, we can take a look at the Microsoft 365, where it can integrate with applications such as Outlook, SharePoint, like we've seen earlier, OneDrive, Excel, and Teams. So you could automate a wide range of tasks where not limited to, you can send in an automation email like we've seen, you could send in reminders, you could be triggering some workflows based on any changes in the SharePoint lists or libraries like we've seen now. You could be creating tasks or updating maybe Excel spreadsheets based on any specific events. You could take a look at the triggers to have more idea on what you could use. You could be maybe automating communication processes within Microsoft Teams. It also integrates with the Dynamics 365, which is Microsoft's suite of business applications. So you could automate maybe creating, updating, or deleting records in Dynamics 365 CRM modules. You could be sending automated notifications to the sales representative or service agents. You could be generating reports or dashboards based on your CRM data. And Power Automate, it also integrates with Azure, and it allows you to leverage the power of cloud computing and artificial intelligence. For example, you could maybe trigger Azure functions to execute any custom code that you have. You could be using the AI capabilities of Azure, maybe for any text and analytics, for image recognition, for maybe language translations using the Azure Cognitive Services, or you could be queuing data from Azure SQL database or Cosmos DB. And Power Automate, it also integrates with Power Apps, which is Microsoft's low-code application development platform. You could be triggering flows in response to user interaction. Like you could have a form which fills out, and based on when you click the submission button, something could run in the background to automate it. You could be integrating your Power App with maybe an external system or services to maybe retrieve or update data. It also integrates with Power BI, which is Microsoft's analytics platform. So you could be, which comes in really handy, and we do it all the time in our company, is when we need to refresh the data sets of a report on a scheduled basis. Very handy when you want to maybe send automated notifications based on any data-driven triggers that we have put in place. And it could basically trigger based on any changes or anomalies we can detect in data. So it's possible to integrate it very seamlessly with Microsoft ecosystem. Next, we can take a look at some advanced flow concepts. So Power Automate, it can utilize very advanced data operations such as filtering, sorting, grouping, and we can take a look at those later on as well, just to transform your data. You could utilize parallel branches and control flows. So parallel branches, like you've seen, you could execute multiple scopes, multiple actions simultaneously within a single flow. You could use control flow actions such as switches or do until loops to enable any conditional branching or looping. You could include error handling, retry policies, so to implement these error handling mechanisms, such as scope and catch actions. We can handle exceptions and errors gracefully within our flows. We could configure the retry policies to maybe automatically retry the failed actions, something we've done similarly recently in a case where the flow was failing. Due to maybe a Microsoft issue, so we added in a retry policy. We could also configure custom connectors. So maybe you have a third-party API or any custom application. So you could create a custom connector to connect with it. We can also talk about next is to integrate with Azure services. Like we've talked before, you can integrate with Azure functions, maybe Logic App, cognitive services, and SQL database or Cosmos DB. You could utilize Power Automate for maybe just to track the execution of your flows by built-in monitoring and logging features. It really helps monitor the performance metrics and troubleshoot any issues that we have. So you could also use Power BI or Azure Monitor for insights and just to get a bit of deep analytics on how your flow is executing and its performance. So you could be utilizing some enterprise features. So the data loss prevention policies, these ensure the security and integrity of your organizational data. So you have some data that you want the security policies to be implemented on, some rules or restrictions just to prevent that data from being shared or leaked through these workflows. So you would be protecting your sensitive information, maybe such as your personal identifiable information, maybe your financial data or any confidential business information that you have. You would be enforcing these. You would, really enforce compliance with these internal policies, just to prevent your sensitive data from being shared or leaked. So it comes in really handy. Next, I can hand it back to Charlie to take a look at our solution for queries, RDG.
Thanks, Ahmad. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, really, that was really interesting. So we're going to take a little bit of a look now at one of the examples that we built for a customer of ours, Currys, and the solution that we built for their retail design group. So I'm pretty sure that everyone who has lived or spent a lot of time in the UK has probably already heard of Currys. They are a major high street retailer. They have over 280 stores across the UK. We've been working with them for over 6 years, and we work with them in a few different areas. We work with their health and safety team. We implement some Power Platform solutions for them and some Power BI solutions. We also work with their retail team, tracking retail assets, so sort of PIN devices and other retail assets in store. But we also work with their retail design group, or RDG as we call them. So RDG basically take responsibility for the design and layout of all of Currys' retail spaces. So when they want to implement a new product or a new update to a product, or there's a marketing campaign around a new product, and then part of that involves that they have some new stands or some changes to stands or posters or whatever it happens to be, and that the implementation of that is going to have an impact on store layout and where they position that and how they position that within the store. The retail design group are the people that basically go through that design process and then approve the fact that that's what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and how it's going to be implemented. It was all a manual process when we first started working with them. We've built what we call the RDG Hub app, which helps that team to automate and collaborate on the design and review process. So we've done some significant work in the SharePoint framework and using Power Automate to support that in order to implement this solution. I'm going to hand over to Ben, who's going to give us a quick demo to give us some context of the RDG Hub. And then I think Ahmad's going to do a bit more of a deeper dive after that into the sort of Power Automate side of things.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so as Charlie mentioned, the RDG group governs the look of product displays within Currys' various retail outlets. Changes and new initiatives must follow a thorough review process in order for the changes to be rolled out. We are utilising Power Automate to help manage this review process. There in the background, there are many flows with various triggers, actions and connectors that help us to achieve this. Ahmad will run through that side of things once we've had a quick run through of the app that I'm currently sharing. So this app is the user interface that we've built using the SharePoint framework. This app sits directly within SharePoint, and we can customize the app to look and work exactly as we want. So just running through the app at a high level. So you can see here we've got the 6 color-coded main areas of the app. I'll start by just going into My Project Hub. This gives you a good overview of all of your projects. You've got your current projects. You can see them here, big list. You've got your projects by status, and when forums are upcoming, we'll talk about forums in a second. You will see the forums there also. So let me just jump into a project, show you what I'm talking about. So I've created this test project. We're in our test environment. So as you can see here, this is a new initiative, and there are a lot of fields that need to be populated, lots of things that need to be done in order for something to be approved through RDG. So you can see here we've got fairly typical form, text fields, drop downs, people pickers. Let's give you an example, picks from the available people in the organization. We've got validation just to help you in populating this form. So there's a lot of fields here. So you'd go through, you populate all these fields. We won't save changes. Once that's done, there's a project checklist. Again, you can see just how much detail is required as part of this approval process. So you just need to fill all of these out with the relevant fields. And then carrying on from that, you've got actions. So each project can have actions assigned to it. So you can see here, you could create a new action with a status, the detail, assign it to a forum, assign it to a person. And then once you add these actions, I won't do it now, but they show up here, and you get a big list of actions, tells you how many open actions, how many completed actions, that sort of thing. Then you get to forums. So the RDG team review changes within weekly forums. Every project must be assigned to a forum. So that's a really key part of this whole process, is tying these projects to available slots in forums. Power Automate does a lot of that work because there's only so many slots available per week, that sort of thing. You also need to include some supporting files when you request approval. So that's where you can add your documents here. They get uploaded into SharePoint. And we can see here project status. This kind of gives you an idea of just how many people are involved in a big organization like Currys, and how complex the approval process can be. We've got these various people that need to approve, various members of the team, delivery PM, design manager, CI manager, approval codes, etc. So quite a lengthy process, but required. So that is just a really quick look at a project. You can see here there's a number of things that you need to do in order to be able to actually request approval. So as you go through and fill all that out, these checkboxes get ticked, and then you're able to press the button. Show you there's a project comments as well. So there's the ability to add comments to a project, and also sometimes there's a need for a design brief with a few extra fields. So that's a really quick overview, just to give you some context into what Ahmed's going to show you, what we're talking about when we say a project or a new initiative. There's a lot more to this application. but like I said, hopefully that gives you a high level understanding of what this app is out to achieve. I'm going to pass you over now to Ahmad, who will run through a few of the associated Power Automate flows that tie everything together to create the full approval process. So let me just stop sharing. Over to you, Ahmad.
Thank you, Ben. Hopefully you can see my screen now. So this is where the fun behind RDG happens. So taking a quick look at the document libraries that we have behind the RDG interface, is you can see there's loads of lists, but mainly the main data is stored in the project charters list. So some of the fields reside here, but the project charters are also linked with project assignees. It's also linked with project comments, like you've seen. It also linked with project statuses, the actions, and then the forum meetings. All the information that we've seen is stored here, including the configuration list. This is where the system admins save a few of the important variables that we use within the RDG app. So taking a closer look at the project charters list, this is where the saved data comes through all of these lists. It's a test environment, so all of this is the test data. So behind each charter, it's linked to a document library where based on the RDG number, you have your document library folder. So here you can input any of the attachments that is relevant to the project charter. Next, we can take a look at some of the Power Automate flows in the background. So RDG, it's a very complex application. We have over 13 or 14 flows in the background running, different types of flows, but mostly scheduled and automated flows. They all send in a few maybe notifications and manipulate the data within SharePoint. So we won't be diving into all of these, but I can give you a handful of three or four good examples of different flows and the logics that we have implemented. So we can take a closer look at one of the main flows that run. So when we fill out the RDG form that we've seen over here, so when all of this information has been filled out and you click on the submit button, so this is when this flow comes into action, because the trigger is defined as when the item is maybe created or modified. So when that happens, we've again defined our flow and divided it in containers, which we call scopes. So a bit of error handling implemented over here. So the main flow of the logic, the main logic of the flow resides in the main control. But when the flow fails, we log the error back into SharePoint for a closer look, and then we send in a error email back to our support, so we can take a closer look why this all has happened. And then if the flow completes, we also again do log it back into SharePoint. Sorry. And then within the main logic of the flow, we set up the logging, we set up the flow configuration. This is where we pull in those variables from the SharePoint list. We log the start of the flow, and here you can see we have so many actions. So these could get really complex when you're creating some of the flows, but to keep it simple, you just need to keep in mind what are the steps you would be performing to automate your requirement. So here we're just fetching all the relevant data to the project charter from the various lists. So the checklist, you could getting it from the forum agendas list, the project assignment, project statuses, getting all of this data together. And then So basically, this is the flow, which depending on the project type, you're also creating a document folder in the background. You are also sending in a notification of submission to the RDG admins and the business leads. So if the flow has been, so if the project charter has been created the first time, so the submission email hasn't been sent yet. So then this part of the flow would run where we have defined the conditions for it. And then you would be updating the project charter that the submission has been sent now. And then you would send out a email notification that, charter has been submitted, and these are the relevant details which are relevant to the RDG admin. And if the project charter is being modified, then you would be figuring out who the modifier is. And if the modifier is the RDG admin itself, you would be notifying the business lead in this instance where you would let him know that the charter has been amended by the RDG admin. So when that happens, you are sending in the submission email, which looks pretty much like this. Has your relevant data about the project charter, and then this is the amendment notification that gets sent out to the business lead that this has been updated by the RDG admin. So a good example of sending in update notifications, and then we have another flow in place. So this is one of my favorites because it's huge. And here, so basically we're utilizing the triggered list. So this is a handy little trick that we use, is that when we want to run flows on demand, we can also utilize the automated flows. So what we do is we have created a separate triggered list, and we create items in that triggered list. So when that happens, when the new item is created in that triggered list, the flow runs. So when that happens, it's gonna be initializing all of these relevant variables. We're getting some of the information from the list at the top as well. We have our error handling at place, and within the main logic of the flow, we're getting our forum meeting details. So the executive summary is basically, as Ben has mentioned before, we have a weekly forum meetings. So in that forum meeting, they can finalize the executive summary. There's a little button on the forums page. So when that happens, it's going to get the forum meeting details. It's going to get all the forum agendas, which are basically the slots, discussion slots that the project charter has. And then you're going to basically loop through all the forum agendas and project charters, get all the relevant information, and populate a summary, which looks pretty much like this. So you're gonna be, based on the conditions, you would be appending it in the executive summary table in this manner, where you're just inputting the objects. And then once the array is all good to go, we're sorting it based on the project charter ID, and then we're selecting the table data out from that array and just joining it all in to create a list. So in the email body, we have a bunch of CSS to make it look prettier, and then all the table, it goes within this email, and then the final product is here, where you have a summarized view of all the project charters, which were discussed in this project forum meeting. So this is another good examples where you maybe want to create like maybe a summary table, or maybe like a mini report, or as detailed as you want it to be sent out to relevant people within your organization based on the data you have. In this instance, we have it in SharePoint. So it's a notification and it's a report that gets sent out. And then we can take a closer look in one of the other summary emails that we send out is when we finalize the agenda. So similarly, we have created its own finalize agenda trigger list. So when we click on the button within the RDG hub, a new item is created in the triggered list. And when that happens, the flow gets triggered because the trigger says when a new item is created, run me. And then once that's running, once it's triggered, it's defining all of these variables again, and we have our main logic, our error handling in place. And within the main logic of the flow, again, we're fetching in all the relevant details which were discussed in that forum meeting, all the project charters, and then creating in another summarized email, which is the meeting agenda. I have a bunch of CSS to make it pretty. And we've defined the headers, and then, it's just basic HTML and a bit of HTML CSS styling. And this is the end result that we've created using the Power Automate. Is an email of another summary of all the emails, all the project charters being discussed at their own very time, being sent out to the relevant people. In this instance, our admin account. So these could be as detailed as you want it to be. So we've taken a look at a few automated flows. We can also give you an example of a schedule of a schedule flow. So here we have a scenario where in that project chart list, we have a bunch of fields, right? So if one of those fields, which is the go live date, so the statuses have been inputted, but the go live date hasn't been entered yet. So what we need to do is we need to remind the project assignees or project members that please fill in that relevant data. So in this instance, it's a reoccurring flow, runs every week, initializes its relevant variables, and what it does is it gets all the project statuses, and then what we do is we filter the array based on these expressions, like I've spoken of before. So these are very handy. So in this instance, we're filtering the array based on the expressions. So what we're doing is, so we're saying that the implementation, it had been approved, but it's been over 6 weeks that the go live date is blank. So what in our the get project status, in the advanced options, what you can do is you can add in your filter queries as well. So I'm saying that, the implementation status is approved, but my go live date is blank. So here we're going to get the relevant data, and we're going to send in a email reminder back to the business lead, the project members, and the admins that your project was granted for approval, but the go live date is missing. Okay, so it would send out a notification which looks like this. Pretty simple. Your text here and your relevant data present at the bottom. So here, we went through a few examples. We have over 14 flows. Each are unique. For example, we have another automated flow which runs whenever we book a slot, sends in an email notification. We have 3 summarized email notifications that are sort of instant, but they're we used a little hack for that. Just to use the automated flows to be triggered on demand. So yeah, so we do have furthermore emails which run based on the status updates when we have new assignees assigned to the project charter. So all of these come in very handy. So based on any requirement that you have, based on any repetitive processes that you're doing within your organization. So you could create an interface using maybe Power Apps, SPFX, or any technology, and in the background you could use Power Automate to basically automate all of these repetitive tasks which you would need to do manually otherwise. So thank you for that. I will stop sharing and we can go back to the slide deck.
Thanks, Ahmed. So it's coming back to me now, just to do a very quick overview of who Cielo Costa are. I'm very conscious that we're slightly overrunning on time. Obviously, if people do need to drop off because they've got other meetings or anything, that's absolutely fine. Yes, we're going to, as I said before, we're going to share the recording and the presentation. We'll also make sure that all the questions that get raised have been answered. So if you have raised a question and you're not able to stick around to hear the answer, that's absolutely fine. We'll make sure that we get in touch with you after the event to make sure you get that response. So I know there's a whole mix of people that are on the call at the moment, some of whom are existing customers of ours and some of whom have never worked with us before. So this is just a very quick summary of who we are. So Cielo Costa is a professional technology services business. We grew up out of the Microsoft ecosystem as Microsoft consultants, but we've broadened out over the last sort of 5 and 6 years into a sort of full service technology services business. So we offer everything from fully managed IT services, bespoke software solutions, cloud infrastructure. We do Microsoft licensing and optimization. So we're a CSP partner with Microsoft. We can do all your Microsoft licensing and we can help you optimize your cloud spend. All sorts of other work around enterprise architecture. Quality assurance is a big area that we're focusing on at the moment. We've got a big team working on that. And we've got our business consulting team as well, who we're focusing on areas like compliance and risk management and business analysis. And we've also got a project management function, so both project management that we utilize ourselves, but also project management that we can offer out to our customers as a service. In terms of growth of the organization, so you can see from that little sort of diagram up there, in 2016 there were 6 people within the business. Today it's over 50 and growing all the time. I feel like I'm constantly recruiting people, but I guess that goes with the territory. And then in terms of just the map, the geography of the company, obviously a large contingent in the UK, but we have people all over the globe in all different countries, everywhere from South Africa to Norway to the Philippines, India, Pakistan and Nepal. And other countries as well. So we have a diverse team, both in terms of culture, time zone, skill sets and everything else. So it's a really great place to work in terms of just seeing all the different sort of people and cultures and environments and that kind of thing. So that's a little bit about us as a business. Then obviously we have a range of customers. So we have lots and lots of customers who we work with. We're not really specific to any sort of vertical. We work with lots of customers in lots of different sectors. So you can see just from this range of logos here, we've got everything in there from retail to healthcare to professional services, the construction industry, charities, water treatment, all sorts of things. So yeah, we do work with a range of customers and a range of size of customers as well. Obviously, there are some big names on there, large customers, but we also work with very small businesses. So, you know, companies like Lantra that are on there, that's a very small business that we work with. So we are diverse both in terms of company size, but also sector. So obviously, if you're interested in working with us, then please reach out. And on that note, I'm just going to give a quick summary of what we talked about today. So we've obviously covered the Power Automate, which was the main subject that we were covering. We looked at how you get started and what the benefits are. We did a demo of that, and then we looked at some more concepts around integration and the more advanced flow concepts. And then we looked specifically at the Retail Design Group and what we've done for them. And then obviously very, very briefly at the end there, I've just spoken to you a bit about us as an organisation, who we are and what we do. If anything that you've seen today resonates with you, or you're interested in getting further information or understanding how Cielo Costa can help you on your journey with Power Automate, then please reach out to me directly and I'll make sure we put you in touch with the right people within the business to answer those questions, queries, problems, whatever it is. You can see my contact details there. Obviously, you'll have access to this when we share the presentation with you later. It's got my phone number, my LinkedIn details, my email address on there. So any number of ways of getting in touch. As I said, I'm aware that we have had a few questions for which we obviously have answers, but due to the time constraints, we won't go through them all today. What we will do is we'll reach out to everyone and give everyone the answers to all the questions that are raised. So if anyone's raised a question that you might be interested in knowing what the answer is, we'll make sure that those questions and answers get shared with everyone as well. So you've got access to find out all that information too. And there's a couple of things that I know were raised where actually it'd be quite useful to send you some links to Microsoft documentation in that space as well. So we'll make sure that we support all that with relevant links and information as well. So I guess that just leaves me to thank you all for attending. Apologies, we overran slightly, only 5 minutes, but obviously appreciate everyone's time is busy, and so we don't want to eat into too much more of your time. If you have any questions, you didn't put them in the Q&A, feel free to reach out to me directly. I will make sure we get a response back to you. And again, thank you all for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, which I don't have the date for off the top of my head, but hopefully they're going to start coming a bit thicker and faster than they have been in the past. So I'm sure we'll have another one up for you soon. So thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. Have a good day.